So we talked with Will Howard on Monday as Ohio State prepares to play Tennessee in its first ever home college football playoff game. I'm Stephen Means. That's Andrew Gillis, and that's Stefan Krajisnik. Stefan, that kid does not hide his emotions well at all. I think he was good until he got the first Michigan question, and then he got another one, and then he got another one, and then you can literally see him shaking the podium. But that's been him all year, right? He's always been a guy who's worn his emotions on his sleeve, and I think that's part of the reason why the fan base loves him is because he has shown some emotion that maybe the guy before him didn't necessarily show. It has nothing to do with who's a better quarterback, but just, yeah, I can rally behind that guy. But there's also the other element of, are you a good quarterback? Do you think Will Howard is good enough to lead Ohio State to a win over Tennessee on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he is, mainly because I think to beat this Tennessee team, you got to be, specifically to Ohio State's case, to beat Tennessee, you need a dual threat quarterback, and Will Howard gives them that. So, yeah, he's absolutely good enough to beat Tennessee. If he could lead them past Penn State, I think that Penn State defense has some similarities to this Tennessee defense. Yeah, on all fronts, I think he can be the guy to lead them to a win. How is he going to channel his emotions is, I think, the big question here, because against Indiana, when they were showing him on the sidelines doing the cigarette thing and the Google Me thing, that was all great because he was playing well and those emotions were going to a good spot. Michigan game, he goes down, he's on the sideline getting amped up, trying to come back in. He comes back in. They end up getting that 2-minute drive at the end of the half, but outside of that, it seemed like the emotions weren't being channeled the right way. Some of that is part of the game plan that was called, but some of that falls on Will Howard. I don't think anyone would say he played his sharpest game. Can he channel it the right way? Can he do what he said in there of don't let Michigan beat you twice? Can he be the guy that kind of leads this charge? Because he is a new guy, right? But it's evident that he wears the emotions of this loss just as much as maybe not just as much as everyone like. It's hard for a guy like Jack Sawyer who's been here a while, a guy like JT who's been here a while. But Will has quickly showed that game meant a ton to him, and losing that game meant a ton to him. Can he channel those emotions the right way into this Tennessee game? I think that's the test for him, because I think he's going to have to be good. That's another part of this conversation. Is, do I think he's good enough to beat Tennessee? Yes, he's also going to have to be good enough to beat Tennessee. This cannot be a game like Penn State. I don't think he played his sharpest game either, but it was enough to beat that Penn State team. I don't know on this stage if a performance like that can beat this Tennessee team. He's going to have to be really good, make the right decisions, be the run game coordinator, but also make some big plays through the passing game. There's a lot that he's going to have to do. We spent all year talking about how Will Howard doesn't need to be Superman for this team to win. Well, the offensive line has changed a ton since then. This Tennessee team is the matchup that they've gotten in the first round of the playoff. He doesn't have to be Superman, but he's going to have to be really good for them to win this game. I think he can be, but it starts with channeling the emotions the right way.
So what does that look like? Will Howard is one of the three reasons Ohio State won this game. What does that look like, Andrew?
Facilitator. That's the word you want to hear, right? Because Stefan had a really good point where he said he has to be good, because if Will Howard is not good, like, this team's not going to be able to run the ball effectively, right? Like, this team's not going to go 4 or 5 yards a play, and they're going to try to do a little bit what Tennessee wants to do, where it's, hey, we're just going to run it 35 times, and Travion and Quinshon are going to get 28 carries between them, and blah, blah, blah. Like, this team's not good enough to do that right now, the way that they're constructed, especially on the offensive line. So Will Howard has to be good. And I think the way it looks when Will Howard plays well is, number one, the turnover gene has got to go away. The turnover gene cannot show up again, because we saw it against Penn State. It almost cost him, where he threw the pick six on the first pass of the game that he threw, fumbled through the back of the end zone. That cost Ohio State 7 points. Like, he was directly responsible for 14 points going against Ohio State in that game. Threw 2 picks against Michigan. You can't have that. You can't have that. So that's step number one. You got to get rid of the turnover gene. You can't let that flare up again. And the second thing, I think, he's going to be helped out, I think, by a game plan. I think you could throw some on Will Howard for the Michigan game. I think you could also throw a lot on Chip Kelly and Ryan Day for the way that game was called. And I think he's going to get helped out a little bit more this game, where I think Ohio State, go watch our other video, I think we talked about it, where Ohio State, I think, recognizes the position that they put themselves in against Michigan and that they need to put themselves in against Tennessee. I think they're going to get the ball out in space more, and that requires Will Howard getting the ball there. I don't think Will Howard's going to have to be, 7-step drop and firing 20-yard outbreakers where, you're throwing it over the top of the corner and in front of the safety. You're not going to be doing that, I don't think, if you're Will Howard. You just got to get the ball out in space. You got to find Jeremiah when he's crossing over the middle on a crosser where you get him on a man beater or something like that, right? You've got to get the ball to the players that when they're there. You can't have those moments against Michigan where, you second guess it or, you double pump or anything like that. And I think he's good enough to do that. I think he's good enough to do that. That's what we've seen from Will Howard when this offense has been humming. Right? When this offense has been at its best, especially kind of in this new iteration without Josh Simmons and I guess maybe less time without Seth McLaughlin, when this offense is moving, the ball's coming out quick, like that 2-minute drill against Michigan. The ball's coming out fast. He's looking at his receivers. The ball, it's a quick step drop, and I think Will Howard's good enough to do that. So, yes, he is good enough to beat Tennessee. I do have questions if things start to break down around him. If he starts to if it turns into, hey, Will Howard go win the game for us, I start to have a little bit more questions than I do right now.
Ryan Day says execution fuels emotion a lot. I think that's backwards with Will Howard. His emotion can sometimes fuel his execution, and so he's got to channel that the right way. You brought up the Michigan moment in that situation. That's cool. All the rah-rah stuff is great, but if you do all that, now you're so amped up that you incomplete a pass because of it, that's not helping your team. Right, it's only a good thing if it's helping your team. And there's been moments where it's helped this team as well. I don't think it's always been negative in those situations. So that's the first thing is, to your point, just channel it now. I understand you're in it now. You feel the loss just as much as everybody else does. I understand you only have one and a lot of these guys have 4. But given it's a 6-5 Michigan team, dude. So it's and you and Caleb and Seth McLaughlin and on down the list, you were brought in to fix that problem. Instead, you've been added to the list of people who have been hurt by that problem. So I get all that. You're even on Monday, he's still frustrated by that loss, but it's time to let it go. And you can think about it in January, maybe when you're holding a trophy, or maybe you're not holding a trophy. We don't know how the season's going to end up. But he's just got to channel his energy the right way. He doesn't need to be Superman. Unless the moment calls for Superman. And that moment will show itself. Don't go forcing Superman. Don't go putting the cape on when the cape is still in the dryer. Let it come to you. And that was what was so impressive about some other quarterbacks we've seen here when they've had those moments. They didn't force it. They let that moment come to them, whether it was Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, or C.J. Stroud. I'm not saying he's as good as those guys, but he has the same role they had. Okay, this is our quarterback, so we can sit here and go, oh, he's not C.J. Stroud all we want. They said the same thing about C.J. at one point. Oh, he's not Justin Fields. So, I don't know, go out there and change people's opinions, but don't force it. Because when you force it, that makes things worse. Steven, Andrew, Stefan, we force things all the time. Like we're getting ready to force you to go sign up for a text, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. And then when you're done signing up for the text, I'm going to force you to go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. OSU, Tennessee, they're being forced to play each other in 20-degree weather outside for a chance to get to the Rose Bowl. See you Saturday.